Turn-based games are dead? Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has once again proved that this was false. With its mix of turn-based strategy and real-time action, it shows that what players really want is something fresh, not just chasing last year's trend. Meanwhile, big publishers keep insisting single-player games can't sell, like when EA CEO blamed Dragon Age's direction on the lack of live service features. Developed by Sandfall Interactive as their first game, Clair Obscur has already sold 3.3 million copies and holds a 9.7 user score on Metacritic. That's better than some big-budget releases. The success of Clair Obscur challenges what we've been told about what matters in game development, especially when you look at who actually made this game.
When one falls, not if, when. We knew not all of us would make it, but we continue.
Let's look at how a small, focused team managed to pull off something that's usually reserved for studios with hundreds of employees, with supposed years of experience in developing games. Sandfall Interactive was founded in France in 2020, with the goal of making single-player games that put story and world-building first. The core team was about 30 people, and even at its peak, the studio didn't grow much beyond that. Most of the team came from big studios like Ubisoft, but they wanted to work on something that wasn't just another sequel or trend-chasing project. Creative director Guillaume Broche started the whole thing back in 2019. He was already working in the industry, but he kept coming back to the kind of games he actually liked playing. Classic JRPGs like Final Fantasy VIII, IX, and X. He began experimenting with Unreal Engine, building a prototype in a spare time called Sample U Project. That experiment eventually grew into the foundation for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Francois Maurice, now the COO, joined because he was on board with Broche's vision for a proper, modern turn-based RPG, something big publishers had mostly abandoned. One of the interesting things about Sandfall's team is how they built around people's strengths, not just resumes. Jennifer Svedberg-Yen, the lead writer and game director, didn't even come from game development. Her background was in finance, but she brought a clear vision for the story and world, and the team trusted her to guide the narrative. Instead of following market trends or worrying about monetization, they focused on building a game around that creative vision. When it comes to budget, Sandfall's approach was even more unconventional. The publisher, Kepler Interactive, said that if you asked 10 people to guess how much the game cost to make, all 10 would guess too high. Estimates placed the budget below $30 million, less than what some AA games like Mirror's Edge cost nearly 2 decades ago. That forced the team to be creative with their resources. They didn't add filler content or stretch out the playtime just for the sake of it. The result is a game with around 30 hours of tightly designed content where every system connects back to the main themes. Most AAA studios do the opposite. They put hundreds of people on a project, spend massive amounts of money, and often end up with bloated games full of unnecessary features meant to keep players coming back for monetization. Sandfall kept things simple and focused. Every decision was about making the game better, not about player retention stats or live service mechanics. This approach paid off, and it's a big reason why the game stands out. But the team's philosophy didn't just shape the story and world, it also changed how the game plays, especially when it comes to combat.
For those who come after.
A lot of people think turn-based combat is slow or outdated, but Clair Obscur Expedition 33 flips that expectation. The combat system mixes turn-based strategy with real-time action, so you're not just picking moves from a menu. You're watching for attack cues, then timing your dodges or parries to avoid damage and open up counterattacks. It's a style that reviewers have compared to Mario RPG and Like a Dragon, where you need reflexes as much as planning. The result is a system that feels active and keeps you involved throughout each fight. The game keeps things manageable by layering mechanics without making them overwhelming. Each character is designed with a unique playstyle. Gustav, for example, uses basic attacks to build up charges, which he can then spend on his strongest moves. Lune, on the other hand, stacks elemental effects to unlock bigger spells. The skill trees are short and focused, so you get a few tools and have to learn how to use them well. It's a bit like what you see in Baldur's Gate 3, but trimmed down for a more classic JRPG feel. The real-time mechanics are what really set the combat apart. Parries have a tight timing window, but reward you with a chance to hit back. Dodging isn't just about avoiding damage, it's about reading the enemy and reacting at the right moment. Later, you unlock special dodges and jumps for certain attacks, which adds to the challenge. To make battles feel more intense, the game films each skill like a mini cinematic, so every big move gets a bit of extra polish without slowing down the action. There's also the Picto system, which changes how you build your characters. Pictos give you perks and stat boosts, like changing how you gain action points or making your dodges more effective. If you use a Picto long enough, it evolves into Illumina, letting you stack effects and customize your party in ways the skill tree doesn't cover. This system adds depth without making things too complex. Compared to most live service games, where combat is often repetitive and designed to keep you grinding, Expedition 33 offers about 30 hours of focused, well-designed encounters. The UI, inspired by the Persona series, keeps everything clear and easy to navigate. Every system works together to keep you thinking and reacting, not just going through the motions. What stands out most is how the game respects your time and skill. You can't just mash buttons or rely on gear. You need them to learn patterns, experiment with builds, and pay attention. Reviewers have called the combat addictive for a reason. It's challenging in a way that feels fair and rewarding. But the game's appeal isn't just about the combat. There's also the story, which is something you don't see often, especially from a small team.
I'm here.
Instead of relying on spectacle or a big-name writing team, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 builds a story around real emotions and tough questions. Jennifer Svedberg-Yen, who was an investment banker before joining Sandfall, had never written for games before. Despite that, her approach gives the story a personal, grounded feel. The main premise is simple but effective. In this world, the paintress decides the exact age when everyone will die, and people grow up knowing the year they'll be erased. That sense of an unavoidable end shapes every decision the characters make, and it's hard not to get pulled in by their struggle to find hope with a deadline hanging over them. The writing stands out because it doesn't waste time on long-winded exposition. Early on, you get journals and dialogue that drop you right into the world's rules and problems, a choice that's been praised for hooking players quickly. Instead of saving every twist for a late-game reveal, the story lays out its cards and focuses on how characters deal with what's coming. This approach, similar to a French tragedy, means the impact comes from watching people react to their fate, not from chasing shock value. Conversations feel natural, characters interrupt, change their minds, and talk like people you'd actually meet. Even the gestrels, who add comic relief, help explain the world without feeling forced or out of place. Voice acting plays a big part in making the story hit. Charlie Cox, who voices Gustav, brings the right mix of exhaustion and determination. The rest of the cast also avoids melodrama and keeps the emotions believable. There's one moment early on where Lune breaks down after a loss, and instead of feeling staged, it comes across as something anyone might do in her place. The game balances these heavier emotions with humor, so it never feels overwhelming. When you compare this to something like Dragon Age: The Veilguard, which has been criticized for pacing problems and dialogue that drags, you see the difference. While many AAA RPGs sometimes get bogged down trying to be all things to all players, Clair Obscur stays focused. There's no filler or forced bonding, just characters reacting to what's actually happening. Even side quests connect back to the main themes of time and sacrifice, so nothing feels like an afterthought. It's rare to see this kind of focus in a game from such a small team. Sandfall didn't bring in a dozen writers or chase market-tested story beats. Instead, they built a narrative that feels tight and personal from start to finish. The result is a story where players get attached to the group, care about their fate, and remember the moments that actually matter. With a story this strong, the setting needs to support it. Most RPGs play it safe with their worlds, but here, the art direction makes just as bold a statement. Expedition 33 stands out right away by setting its world in the Belle Époque, drawing from late 19th century France. This choice gives the game a look and feel you don't see in most RPGs. Instead of another medieval or sci-fi backdrop, you get detailed architecture inspired by the Art Deco movement, with touches that are unmistakably French. The developers have talked about how they wanted to move beyond familiar tropes, and you can see that in the way the city streets, grand buildings, and even the small interiors are designed. There's a strong emphasis on ironwork, stained glass, and the kind of decorative flourishes you'd expect from the era, but it all fits into a fantasy world that still feels grounded. The art team, led by Nicholas Max and Fran Cobb, worked closely with the creative director to create what they call a fantasy Belle Époque style. They took cues from Art Deco influences, much like what you see in games like Dishonored or BioShock. But the goal here wasn't just to copy. Instead, they blended those inspirations with their own vision, resulting in something that feels unique to this game. You'll notice the 90s anime influence in some character designs and cutscenes, but the setting itself is all about the French flair, ornate facades, curved balconies, and period costumes. Even the dialogue includes French phrases, adding another layer of authenticity. Colors used to set the tone throughout the game. Some locations are bright and full of deep blues and golds, while others shift to grayscale during heavier moments in the story. This isn't just a visual trick, it's a way to make the dramatic scenes feel more intense. When the color drains from the world, it adds to the sense of foreboding or loss. The overall effect is a world that feels cohesive and intentional, with every detail supporting the story and atmosphere. The French influence doesn't stop at the visuals. The music, the way characters speak, and the fashion all reinforce the Belle Époque setting. You get the sense that the team thought about how people would actually live in this world, not just what would look impressive on screen. Key locations like in cities have their own personality, with grand boulevards and hidden alleyways that feel lived in. The architecture also helps with navigation since every area looks and feels different. Even the menus and UI reflect the inspiration, with elegant fonts and layouts that fit the world instead of feeling like an afterthought. It's a level of consistency that's rare, especially compared to bigger games that often fall back on generic medieval castles or futuristic cities. Here, the setting becomes a character, shaping how you experience the story and gameplay. A world that's thoughtfully built does more than just look good. It helps keep the experience focused and memorable, which is something players have picked up on and talked about a lot. When you look at how Expedition 33 handles its runtime, it's clear the developers wanted to make every hour count. The main story takes about 30 to 35 hours to finish, and if you go after all the side content, you're looking at closer to 50 or even 60 hours. This range hits a sweet spot for a lot of players who are tired of games that drag on just to pad out playtime. Instead of packing in endless side quests or collectibles, Sandfall Interactive focused on quality. Most of what you do in the game feels meaningful, with side quests that actually tie into the story or develop the characters further. A lot of modern AAA games get flack for being too long and losing focus, but Expedition 33 takes a different approach. Players and critics have pointed out that the experience feels complete, even though it's not as long as some big-budget RPGs. Game Informer and IGN both mentioned how the more streamlined length works in the game's favor, giving you a focused, engaging story without the usual filler. The pacing stays tight, and you're not left with hours of repetitive busy work. Another thing people have noticed is the price. At $50, it's about 28% less than the standard $70 price tag you see on a lot of new AAA releases. The team said this was intentional. They wanted the price to match the game's length and make it accessible to more players. But even at a lower price, many say it feels like a full, polished experience. The value comes from how well everything fits together, not just from the number of hours you spend. The absence of microtransactions is also a big deal. There's no in-game store, no paid DLC at launch, and nothing locked behind extra payments. The developers have been upfront about wanting players to get a complete game from the start. This approach builds trust because you're not being asked to spend more for new weapons, skins, or extra missions. Everything you need is already in the game, and the experience isn't broken up by reminders to buy more. Even the side content is handled with care. Instead of dozens of generic fetch quests, You get a handful of well-written side stories and optional dungeons that reward you with more lore or character development. There's no sense of busy work, and nothing is there just to artificially boost the hour count. It's all about giving you something worthwhile to do, whether you're chasing the main story or exploring on your own. This kind of design shows that respecting the player's time doesn't mean cutting corners. It means focusing on what matters and delivering a solid experience from start to finish. It's a different philosophy than what you see from a lot of bigger studios, and it's one reason so many players have responded so positively. Looking at what happened with Clair Obscur Expedition 33, there's a lot AAA studios could take away if they're paying attention. The game's performance shows that players still want single-player RPGs with a clear vision, not just the next big live service trend. EA CEO Andrew Wilson said that Dragon Age The Veilguard only engaged 1.5 million players, which was 50% less than what they hoped for, and blamed the lack of live service elements. That's a telling sign of where priorities are for some big publishers. But when you look at the numbers, it's clear that well-made single-player games like Clair Obscur and Baldur's Gate 3 are thriving, even without those extra hooks. Kepler Interactive, the publisher behind Clair Obscur, took a different approach. Instead of following trends, they focused on originality and gave the development team the freedom to create something new. Portfolio director Matthew Handrahan said that games need to be genuinely fresh to succeed now, and Kepler's structure supports that. Studios under their label get to handle the creative side, while Kepler takes care of things like HR and legal. This setup lets developers focus on making good games instead of worrying about chasing the latest market trend. It's a model that stands out, especially when so many AAA publishers are stuck in cycles of market research and risk avoidance. Recent high-profile live service releases haven't helped the AAA case. Concord, for example, was pulled from sale after a disappointing launch, showing that even big budgets and marketing can't guarantee success if the game doesn't offer something players actually want. In contrast, smaller games with focused designs and new ideas are seeing better results. Sandfall Interactive made Clair Obscur with a budget smaller than some AA games from years ago, but the game still delivered a polished, memorable experience. The key difference is that these teams aren't trying to be everything to everyone. They're making games with a specific vision and sticking to it. Expedition 33's Day 1 release on Xbox Game Pass also helped it reach a wider audience. But that's not the only reason it caught on. The game's tight structure, lack of microtransactions, and respect for player time made it stand out. Players have shown they appreciate games that don't waste their time or push them towards endless grinding. The success of both Clair Obscur and Baldur's Gate 3 make it clear that passion, creative freedom, and focus matter more than following every industry trend. This should be a sign for big publishers to reconsider what they're prioritizing. When smaller teams with less money can make games that connect with players and get talked about for weeks, it's worth asking what's really holding AAA studios back. The answer might say more about the industry than most executives want to admit.
Tomorrow comes. Thanks to you. Expedition 33.
Clair Obscur Expedition 33 shows what's possible when a 30-person team with a sub-$30 million budget focuses on originality and quality. While some publishers chase trends and big live service launches, this game found success by putting creativity and player experience first. The result is a single-player RPG that stands out for its tight design, memorable story, and respect of your time. Regardless of your personal opinion of the game, it's hard to deny how Expedition 33 has taken the games industry by surprise and defied the conventions of modern-day gaming. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a wake-up call. The question is, will the AAA games industry finally awaken from their slumber, or will more new bloods like Sandfall Interactive rise to the occasion? Only time will tell. I, for one, am holding on to hope that this is a renaissance of great things to come in the games industry.